So if you see your name with the title Mr. or Mrs., or they use our name in uppercase, this is back to Admiralty law.
The legal fiction is an abstract term to explain a concept, and so is the term strawman.
With debt collectors, people assume when a debt collector comes round that they have actual power. They don't. They have no power whatsoever. They only have the power that you give to them.
Film this, please. Don't obstruct me. I'm not obstructing you. Right. Show us the warrant.
So we don't consent. You need our consent.
That's the end of it.
Do you mind telling me who you
I
are?
won't tell you anything.
So you're a police officer enforcing laws, but you don't know every law, is that right?
That's correct.
90% of the crime, or 99% of the crime they perceive that is crime, is actually called victimless crime. There is no victims, and crime can only exist if there is a victim.
You know, we've seen police officers more interested in becoming debt collectors and enforcing policies, you know, such as speeding tickets and fines and things like that, because they're easy targets.
Once you comprehend the difference between lawful and legal, and ultimately what your legal fiction strawman is, the fear of debt collectors, police, and authority just goes away. If you live in the UK, you are led to believe that the Queen is the only sovereign. This is wrong. The Queen is given authority through the coronation oath. Her oath was a binding contract between the Crown and the people of this nation. This means that we, the people, gave her her sovereignty. And as everyone knows, you can't give away something you do not possess yourself. That means that each and every one of us is sovereign. We each have supreme independent authority over our own flesh and blood human body. The problem is, we have forgotten we are powerful. We have forgotten that we belong to and are part of one of the most amazing species that to our knowledge has ever existed. We have become media obsessed, and in turn obsessed with our own appearance and the way people think about us. The TV is king, but now that is slipping to the constant need to be in touch with our friends. Everything is about fear. Fear of debt, fear of terrorism, fear of ill health, or fear of climate change. This keeps us thinking that we need our government to protect us and rule us. With all this distraction, it is no wonder that most of us didn't notice the massive fraud that our countries and nations around the world have pulled on us. But as you will learn, government is a creation of man, and a creation of man can never be above man. They always need your consent, and this is where your power really lies. With knowledge always comes power, the power not to fear, the power to take a stand against anyone or any corporation that threatens you. The power to say no. It has been said that you need to know that you're in a cage before you can escape from that cage. Let's look into how you're being tricked and how your power is being hidden from you. If you've never heard of the terms legal fiction or strawman, then what you're about to learn is something that sounds so astonishing that it couldn't possibly be true. If I were to tell you that paying your tax, getting a driver's license, registering your car, paying fines, and attending court are all optional and that you are conned into agreeing with them, what would you think? All statutes and acts are optional too. Your strawman is a fictitious legal entity created at your birth through your birth certificate and the registration of that birth.
Okay, my understanding of the legal fiction, which is also referred to as the straw man, the way I explain it when I do talks, I keep it really, really simple. And what I do, I liken it to a game of Monopoly. Now, in a game of Monopoly, you actually have a little token like a dog or a battleship or a hat, you know, like a little top hat, and you move it around the board. Now, I believe that they actually give us a fictional entity which we can actually use or not use. And I believe this is and a lot of other researchers do as well, that this is your name in either uppercase or with a title.
That when each person is born, whenever a human being is born, there's two entities. One is the real entity, which is the human being, the flesh and blood, and the other is a legal fiction, a fictional entity that is nothing more than a piece of paper, the birth certificate. Again, we're duped into believing that these are one in the same, and so we're tricked into representing the legal fiction, the strawman, that birth certificate. So when people get fines and things like that, it's actually consulting the legal fiction, the non-existent entity, the corporate entity that is owned by corporations.
You have any interactions with the bureaucracy, okay? They're not interacting with you. They're actually interacting with your legal fiction, because they can't deal with a flesh and blood human. Yeah, they have to deal with another corporation.
When you start to break down the words that we use and you start to look at the roots of all these words, and you actually look at what these words actually really mean, you start to get an idea of what's going on. The word corporation is very, very specific, because it's corp and oration, it's dead speak. So a corporation is something that's dead. It's an entity that exists only in a legal framework. It doesn't exist in any other framework at all. It only becomes an entity through legal mechanisms and legal means.
In essence, when you were born and far too young to understand, a company with your name was created through your birth certificate. When your parents registered your birth, they actually created a company and handed ownership of that company and you over to the state. It is important to remember that your parents were tricked and had no idea this was happening. This is why the state can take children from their families and it not be classed as kidnapping. They own your child.
They own 1/10. Because they registered the child, they have 9/10. Possession is 9/10 of the law, but there's 1/10 floating about somewhere. And the government have claimed that 1/10. So when the child, because I've had it from social workers, at least now 3 social workers on separate occasions have come out of audiences and actually said to me, you're right in what you're saying, is because we have to get the birth certificate within 48 hours of taking the child. And if they can't get the birth certificate, they have to reapply to be able to get the birth certificate. They have to get it, because that is proof of who the slave is, what the slave is. And actually, in legal terms, they're actually only entitled to the birth certificate and not the child. To take the child on the pretense that they are this legal personality is theft. So in legal terms, it's kidnapping. But for social services, can use legal kidnapping, because everything is okay as long as it has the stamp legal applied to it. That includes war, genocide, anything is okay as long as it's okay, it's legal.
The same thing also happens when you register your car. You get a document back saying you are the registered keeper and not the registered owner.
So yeah, obviously we've just spoken about registering children, and the other thing that we register though is our vehicles. And obviously either of those can allegedly be taken off you at some point in time, which is quite interesting. The 2 registered items are the things that can be taken.
You are the registered keeper of your car. You're not the owner, you're the keeper in their eyes. Now they'll argue that point, and a lot of people will argue that point, but it's quite easy to quell this argument and say, well, okay, if you don't put tax on the car, then they'll come and take your car. Now, in the legal world, taking anything from someone without a legal mechanism to do so is theft.
The legal system cannot deal with humans. It can only deal with pieces of paper. Only common law can deal with humans. So at your birth, they created a piece of paper with your name on it, in capitals, just like any other corporation. This is done to dupe you later in life into thinking that you are the legal entity and not you. Then imaginary penalties and cost are imposed on the straw man, and you, thinking you are it, pay them.
And it's kind of like an overcoat, this legal fiction. You know, as soon as you put it on, as soon as they invite you to put this overcoat on, and you do so, now they can grab hold of the overcoat and throw it in jail with you in it. But until you put that overcoat on, they can't do anything to you because you are not that name. You know, you think you are, you know, you're taught you are, but you're not.
The deception is done through the manipulation of words and language.
But that to me is legalese. It's just jargon that no one really understands, and because no one really understands it, no one ever questions it. We basically have a discussion that everybody is taught incorrect, but because everybody's taught incorrect, they believe it's correct.
Legalese is a whole language of its own. It's a complete legal jargon that's not really designed for anybody to understand it other than those that are supposedly supposed to be enforcing it. And it's something that's so complicated that not even police officers understand what they're saying.
What is wonderful is that they create their own language called legalese, and it has a completely different interpretation from English. You know, we're supposed to have you know, this sort of understanding that we were within the law, and yet they're not even using the same language as we are.
The easiest way to understand legalese is to realize that there are many English words that have more than one meaning, depending on whom you are talking to. If I were to ask you what a person was, you'd probably say a human being, but that's you or I. If you were talking to someone in the law society, i.e. a police officer, lawyer, judge, etc., they have a different dictionary to you or I, and person could mean company or corporation, i.e. the legal fiction.
You know, if you tell a lie often enough, it becomes truth, or certainly the perception of truth. So legalese is jargon that nobody understands other than those who actually come up with a jargon that really, really deeply understand it. And even police officers don't understand it, or magistrates, or even judges for that matter.
Tax is probably the best way, the only way better than fractional reserve banking to starve a community is taxation. And it wouldn't be that case if the tax was actually spent on the people and on the land, but because it's not, it becomes a starving of the people. This again comes back to corruption. And tax would be fine. We'd be living in an amazing health service, incredible roads, all the rest of it, if all the money that went into the taxation pot was paid for what it was supposed to be for. My understanding is it isn't. The problem that we have is the implications for its non-use is that, other than fraud, it's the only debt that can deprive you of your liberty. It's the only debt that they can put you in jail for is tax evasion or tax fraud, which is pretty serious really, because you can ignore as many credit cards or loans as you like and you can never be put in jail for any of that. But if you try and not pay your tax for a while, they'll really like to let you know about that. Funny thing is, I don't see many representatives of people like Amazon or big corporates that aren't paying their tax in the slammer. Maybe they should be.
Income tax in the UK first started in 1799 as a temporary measure to cover the costs of the Napoleonic Wars. It is still a temporary tax today, which expires each year on the 5th of April and has to be renewed as a provision in the annual financial bill. Income tax was withdrawn in 1816, but was re-established in 1842 and has stayed since. Because of this, human beings are the only creatures on the planet that pay to live on it. The government does not own the product of your labor. If they did, you would be a slave. Since they do not own the product of your labor, then taxation can be defined as theft, or more accurately, extortion and blackmail. No man can own another, so no man can own the fruits of another man's labor. Most people will argue that it is a necessary evil, and that it's legal because the government say that it is. How else would we pay for hospitals, police, roads, and so on? Well, reaching into your own pocket to help a good cause is noble. Reaching into someone else's pocket under the threat of force is despicable. Here is a quick analogy. I run a construction firm, and I knock at your door and demand £10,000 to build an extension, or I'll take all your stuff and throw you in a cage. Essentially, that's what the government do when they tax you. They say they're going to supply you with services and protect you, but if you don't pay them, just like the mafia, they are the ones that come after you and use force and violence to get the money out of you. The trouble is, most people never look at these situations from these angles, and so rarely see the deception that is constantly being pulled over our eyes. A large percentage of all the tax you pay is used on war, bailing out the banks, and paying off the national debt. It has been calculated that 47% of all your income is spent on tax. You work 5 to 6 days a week and get to keep 54% of your wages. Then you have to pay for your mortgage or rent, gas, electricity, water, food, clothes, and that's just the basics. No wonder both parents have to work and work constantly, unlike families of just 50 years ago. You are a slave, and you're in a metaphorical cage that, just like Neo, you cannot touch, taste, or smell. A prison created by the mind of man. Governments essentially run human farms and feed you the perception of freedom. Governments do not make money within themselves. The government's primary function is to trick money out of your pocket and feed it into their business, so they can carry on with wars, deception, and human farming, all in plain sight.
They have no lawful basis for whatever they do. There's, they might claim they have a legal basis. Now, legal is a different thing altogether. It's essentially based on contract. You have to contract with them before it becomes law.
This is a prison without bars. This is a prison without big walls to keep them in. It's just a prison of the mind.
The main implication of not paying tax is that you'll grow a set of balls and you'll turn into an adult. That's the main implication.
The three functions of money are distinguished as 1. A store of value or purchasing power, the ability of an item to hold value over time. 2. A medium of exchange. Money serves as a medium of exchange, i.e., an asset that the sellers will accept as payment. A medium of exchange allows people to eliminate the use of barter. 3. A unit of accounting, a way of placing a specific price on economical goods and services. As a unit of accounting, the monetary unit is used to measure the value of goods and services relative to other goods and services. Money, in its modern form, arose from goldsmiths who retained gold and other precious metals in their safes and in exchange they gave certificates to prove the deposits. People then started to exchange the certificates for goods and services, and the goldsmiths very quickly realized they could make a lot of money out of just looking after other people's valuable goods. The now no longer a goldsmith but running a deposit facility took in gold and other precious metals as deposit and issued deposit notes that the public used as money, backed by the gold in the deposit facility's safe. The goldsmiths soon realized that very few people actually redeemed the gold, and so he started to give out loans in the form of deposit notes, knowing that he only needed around 10% of actual gold in his safe, as that would cover, even on a busy day, the amount of people exchanging certificates for gold. The deposit facility would then require the loan repaid plus interest, and this was the birth of modern banking. Through the years, money has been backed by, given a store of value, by the silver standard and gold standard, meaning you could redeem the note for gold, just like it says on this US note here, if you so required. On the 21st of September 1931, the gold standard was abolished in the UK, and on the 13th of August 1971 in the United States. Since 1971, the majority of the planet now use fiat currency. Fiat currency is money backed by nothing and has no value. It only has value because it's decreed as such by the government, and more importantly, we all believe it has value. The only entities that have the legal authority to create money are the Treasury and the banks, and they create it out of nothing. Martin Wolf, the Financial Times chief economic commentator, said this: only 3% of money is physical and 97% is electronic, and this electronic money is completely controlled by the banks. To repeat again, the banks create money out of nothing and then lend it to you and ask you to work using the most precious commodity on the planet, your human energy, to pay back the loan plus interest. Money is essentially a claim on human labor and can also be defined as debt. A debt is created for you to pay back. So why don't the banks just print money and get rich that way? Well, because they need you. They need you to create a promissory note in the form of an agreement. A promissory note is a species of money, and when you complete and sign the agreement, the document now has value, just like a banknote. So, at the heart of money lending is a massive fraud. You create the money with the authority of your signature and the creation of a promissory note that the banks then securitize, making them more money. Then the bank makes you believe you have borrowed the money and requires you to pay it back plus interest. Please remember this when you get to the section about debt later on in this documentary. During this documentary, you will hear people talk about promissory notes and bills of exchange. A promissory note is a promise to pay and is created by you, the debtor, and a bill of exchange is an order to pay and is created by the creditor. And they both have value.
The way I try and explain the whole crux of the financial system is what I normally do when I'm doing a talk. I have a little bag of marbles and I have 10 marbles in there if I haven't lost one of them. And so what I do, I sort of get the marbles out, show everyone, right, 10 marbles, put them back in the bag. I say, right, is there anyone here that can get 11 marbles out of this bag? And they're all looking at me like I'm mad. Say, well, that's how the banking system works. It's absolutely crazy because what they do, they create a certain amount of money, but then they want more back. But hang on, that interest that they want more back doesn't exist. It can never exist. So two things have to happen as a result. one thing, the supply of money, or marbles, whatever we're talking about, has to increase. Not only does it increase, it has to increase exponentially, more on top of more. So it's basically, the curve is going up and up and up and up. The other thing that happens is people are always, it's like musical chairs. You know, if we all stand up and dance and then we all sit down, but a chair is taken away, somebody is going to end up on the floor. Somebody can't find that money to pay back because that money does not does not exist. And this creates the poverty and crazy competition and not enough to go around. And this is the biggest problem with fractional reserve banking.
Well, you think about it, they don't teach us at school anything about money. I mean, money is about the most important thing in this society. Why don't they teach us anything about it? They can't, don't they? They can't. It's a confidence trick. Yeah? You know, and it's 180 degrees from the way we think of it. You know, we think that money comes from somebody else, but it actually comes from us. Yeah. You know, when you get a loan, they present you with a loan agreement. Yeah. What do you think that loan agreement is? What is it? It's a promissory note. Yeah. I promise to pay back 3 times the amount if it's a mortgage. Yeah. You know. So that what they do with that promissory note, they monetize it. They put it into an account and cash it. And now they give you that money and say, now you have to pay it back to us. But you created that money. You know, it's your promissory note. You created that money. So transaction's over with. You don't have to pay them back because they didn't do anything. They just went, thank you very much, and here you go.
Fundamentally, a promissory note is a promise to pay. Now, if I was going to give you a promissory note for 2 dozen eggs, that means here's an IOU, the IOU, 2 dozen eggs. Now, it could be on demand or it could be at a set time in the future. If it was on demand, you would be within your right to say, John, look, here's a promissory note. It says on demand, I want 2 dozen eggs. So I said, all right, look, I haven't got on me. I'll pop over to the shop and get you your eggs. Here we go, there we go. And this is what we did originally when promissory notes started out, was that we used them to make a promise that, because, I've got like all these pounds of gold, right? And I want them stored safely. And I want to be able to trade that gold, but without the hassle of carrying it around. So what I do, I go to the bank and they give us a promissory note. So I've got this promise to pay. So I can then take it somewhere else and say, look, I've got 2 pounds of, 2 pounds of gold here, or silver, whatever it is. This is how it started out. Now, at no time have promissory notes been, outlawed or taken away, and this is how big corporations actually trade with each other, with promissory notes. And in their memorandum articles of association, when they set up their businesses, a lot of them will state within their documents that they will take promissory notes. Now, the problem is, of course, that the actual Bank of England and our government, working with the banks, have taken away all the value to the promissory notes which are used as our currency. So now the promise to pay £1, well, £1 of what? It's not £1 of anything. It's just, it's now become like monopoly money. This is back to the analogy with monopoly. It's not worth anything. So basically it's just a piece of paper. So what we do, we can actually say, well, here's a promissory note for £1,000. I want to swap it for your promissory note, or put it into my bank account and credit my bank account with £1,000. Now, we spoke to a bank manager and we said to the bank manager, could you tell me what would happen if I came to your branch with a promissory note for £1,000? Would you have to accept it? And his words were, yes, of course I would. It's law. So you're going to accept a promissory note? No, I'm not going to accept it, but by law, I have to. So this is a bank manager that knew the law. He also knew the difference between a bill of exchange and a promissory note as well. So he was well up on his law. So, and remember, these are statutes, but because these are companies, they have to apply by their statutes, you see. We don't, but they do. So it's almost like, they create enough rope, and they end up hanging themselves, you see. So it's actually, the statute is the way that we actually overcome them, I believe. But, yeah.
Because this is evolving, so, you know, as we do things, they do things to counter and so on. But this is evolving. The latest one is along with the remittance slip, other people have created a promissory note, which is literally a piece of paper that says, I promise to pay the bearer the sum of blah, blah, blah. And you sign it, date it, and now that becomes a specie of money according to the Bill of Exchange Act. In fact, the money in your pocket is a promissory note. Somewhere it says, I promise to pay the bearer, and there's somebody's signature on it. And it's actually an invalid promissory note because it's not dated. Or actually, that's wrong. That's actually wrong. It's on demand, so it is dated. It's not actually getting away with stuff. This is the thing you've got to get out of your head, because what's really happening is they're getting away with it.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just coming back into your power and saying, no, I'm not going to give away my signature anymore. This is what you're doing. Your signature is the most powerful thing on this planet. Yeah, your signature is worth an unlimited amount. And this is the thing we don't realise. We have the power. You can go into a bank, okay, and come away with £100,000 as a loan, yeah? What do they take from you for that £100,000? Your
signature.
Your signature. Just your signature. You see the power of that signature now, yeah? So with your signature, if you write your promissory note, you've created money. And that money is your promise to pay. Your promise to work, use your energy, yeah? That's all there is. Your unlimited energy. And that is what the money is. And you supply it, not banks.
Don't assault me! Don't assault me! Don't assault me!
Am I free to go? Listen, mate, I'm asking the questions. You're the public servant. Will you take your hand off my car, please? Thank you.
I do not consent, officer. I don't consent to a mental breaching the peace.
But I am sovereign over my human body, and I do not consent to any search. I do not consent to any authority you feel you have over me. I am a sovereign British citizen, and I do not wish to be searched.
I am the county court bailiff. No authority.
Excuse me, it's our right to film you. It's our right to film. Yes, it is. Under what law are we not allowed to film?
Because I'm asking you not to.
Yeah, but you have no authority to tell me not to film.
Because we're in a public area.
James Parisi with the Quincy Police Department. What is your name, sir?
That's good to know, sir.
Yeah, what is your name?
Well, I don't think that by law I have to identify myself. I'm on the sidewalk minding my own business and there's no laws being broken.
You said, look mate, I can't give you the full section. Can't give you the full section because you can't expect me to know it, is your words. Yeah? And I'm saying, well, if I can't expect you to know it, you can't expect me to know it.
Can you show us the warrant, please?
We've got a warrant for arrest.
Can you show us the warrant, please?
Show us your documentation.
Show us the warrant, please, with a wet signature.
I'm not happy with this, mate, honestly. Okay, alright, well... Am I being detained right now?
No, you're not being detained right now.
Am I free to go?
Sorry?
Am I free to go?
Not at the moment, no, because I need to...
Well, am I being detained or arrested right now?
The difference between lawful and legal, as I see, is lawful relates to common law, the law of the land, the law which governs all people, the original law, which is quite straightforward. To me, it's a case of don't cause any harm or loss or damage to any person, and don't cause that to happen to anybody, and everything's good. And you know, that's pretty straightforward and simple. Everyone can understand what that means. Legal pertains to our legal system and where statutes and acts come from, and it's a system that doesn't actually relate to common law. So we've got these two systems running side by side. We've been fooled into believing that they are one and the same, and so when police are policing the streets, we're enforcing policies, acts and statutes which, when looked into, are not actually necessarily lawful.
Common law is the law of the land, and laid down over centuries of court cases in front of juries, humans making law for humans.
For the severest measure of punishment.
Common law pertains to lawful, and anything outside of lawful falls under the legal or no system at all. The legal system covers all statutes and acts and civil matters. Things like owing money to banks, not paying fines or tax. Basically, anything that isn't criminal. For there to be a crime, there has to be an injured party. In this case, a human. And there are three basic principles that all law needs to apply to. They are as follows. Do not breach the peace. Cause no one else any harm. Cause no one else any loss. Do not use mischief in your promises and agreements. Apart from that, everything else is free rein.
Lawful refers to the natural law, the law of the land, okay? And that's not causing any harm to anyone, obviously not stealing from anyone, and not using fraud in your contracts. So basically, you're not doing any harm or trying to get one over on anyone else. Legal refers to the statutes, which I mentioned earlier. And the statutes are basically all the rules of society, and not just, we haven't just got the UK statutes, but we've got all the European statutes. So you've literally got tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of laws, which every day, we could be breaking without knowing.
We all know that you can't go around raping and killing and murdering and invading. We don't need fucking laws for that. Like, we'll deal with that as it comes. But anything other than that, what you want to smoke, where you want to live, where you want to take a shit, who you want to insult, not a fucking other adult on this planet. Like, what are you, my dad? Are you my fucking dad telling me what to do? Like, that's how I feel now when police or, like, control freaks try and give it to me.
Legal is essentially according to contract. You have to, the rules that are sort of handed down to us, but you have to contract with them before they become law. And that law is contract law. You enter into contract, you're bound by it. So yeah, it's two different things. One's overlaid on top of the other.
Parliament has no say in common law and is bound by it. So they create Acts of Parliament, and in the US, Acts of Congress. Because government is a creation of man, and a creation of man can never be above man, they need your consent before they have the force of law.
The principle of by consent, if people don't realise, is that we obviously have police because we want them, and that we only have to do what they say if it's reasonable, if we consent to what they're asking to. That is the principle of it for me. Obviously, the larger issue is the assumption that everybody who's walking on this land has given consent to be policed by these people. And that's an assumption that most police officers in this country live by without realising that it's not true, and this is where diplomatic immunity is a good example of where, well, actually the consent isn't given and the police don't have the power to act. Another good example that shows it's all about jurisdiction is that our police have no power at all at the American embassy. But that's on our land, isn't it? And that's another example. Embassies are a good example that shows that jurisdiction is portable. It's not tied to land, it's tied to the party. So I can carry my jurisdiction with me, which is the whole principle of sovereignty in general.
My understanding of policing by consent is that, as I said earlier, when a law is passed, for it to be lawful, it has to have the consent of the people. People have to consent to that law and consent to abide by it. But unfortunately, I think we're in a system now where that obviously doesn't happen, but people don't realise that by verbally agreeing with, let's say, a police officer in relating to a parking ticket, that you're entering into a verbal contract, and by agreeing with what the officer is saying, you're consenting to being bound by the law, or whatever the law is. And people, when we say words like "do you understand," when a police officer says to you, reads the caution and says "do you understand," what they're actually saying is, do you stand under our authority? Now again, you know, I didn't know this as a police officer, and even the words that are spoken as a police officer, police don't even necessarily understand themselves. So I believe that people have to consent to a law for it to apply to them in the legal sense, because it's not common law.
So when you interact with the police or the court system, they will ask you for your name, address, and date of birth. This is done to create joinder between you and your legal fiction, and to trick you into representing it. Once you agree to represent your legal fiction, now they can deal with you.
They can only apply their legal mechanisms if they have the name of the slave they're dealing with. If you state, well, I don't want to give my name, then they can't apply the mechanisms to you because they have no name for their paperwork. And remember, all their systems work via paperwork. It's all paperwork.
I think you might be wanted.
Well, if I'm wanted, what's the problem?
Could be arrested.
Well, then arrest me then, innit?
I need to establish who you are.
No, you don't. If you think I'm the person that's wanted, arrest me, innit?
Where do you live? Tell me your date of birth.
What? I'll give you up. I want your details now. Lock me up for what? Give me your details. Give me your details. Give me your details.
You won't get my details, and I tell you this as well. Yeah, I tell you this as well. I'm not a criminal. I'm a peaceful man sitting out here. I just burn down the system of corruption and pollution that will not represent.
But in the meantime, I'll leave you to it. But obviously, if there are any problems, then I might have to come back and obtain your details and speak to you further.
Look, you have no right to just leave me to it. You have no right to say you're going to come back and ask for my details. I'm me, he's him, yeah. You're you. That's our details.
Oh yeah. Am I obliged to give you my details?
We've spoken to you.
Yes.
Okay, we've asked you to leave the store.
Yes. Wait a second.
Give me your details. You have my details.
Am I obliged to give you my details?
You're not obliged to give me your details.
Oh, great. Okay.
Why?
How you define yourself under the sex crime definition?
Am I obliged to answer that, sir? I do not wish to answer any questions, sir.
You don't have to, I'm just asking you.
Am I obliged?
You're not obliged.
I'm not obliged. No comment.
Okay, that's fine.
What are you doing? Am I obliged to answer that, sir?
No?
No comment.
Okay. Are you going to answer any of my questions?
If I'm obliged, I will, but if I'm not obliged, then I won't be answering any questions.
Alright, that's fine.
Are you going to tell us your name or not?
Am I obliged?
And then you're getting out your van and coming over and trying to intimidate me. Go back in your van and go away, there'll be no complaints. Stay here, I'll be speaking to your sergeant about all of you.
Right, so you're demanding now, are you? Or are you requesting that I give you my details? Right, well, I would politely decline your request. Why is that? What's your reason for decline? Privacy.
You got an ID or driver's license on yourself?
Yeah. Nope. Not gonna do it. What's your name and badge number?
Officer Carlson, ID 7345.
Am I being detained or am I free to go?
Free to go whenever you want to.
Thank you, sir.
I'm asking you again, am I obliged to give you my details?
I'd like to, because I'm going to do a name check.
I got it.
I'd like to see if,
I got it.
If you're banned from this area or
okay.
whatever.
Well, I'm asking you again, I know you'd like to, but the reason, just to explain to you, the reason I don't like to give my details is because I don't trust where those details go. Do you understand?
You well know as well as I know, sir, that in order for you to ask me my name, you have to suspect me of committing a crime. You know and I know that you don't suspect me of committing a crime. You're just poking around where you don't belong.
Okay, is there a problem, officer? Constable.
Basically, under section 163 of the Road Traffic Act, I'm allowed to check your documents.
Of course you are. And I know I'm not obliged to give any details whatsoever. However, I'd like to know, is there a problem?
I don't even have to speak to you unless you're going to arrest me, mate.
You got some mental health problems?
No, mate. No, I just know my right to remain silent.
Well,
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did, mate. When the camera was not on. That's what you said.
Have you got
okay?
a contact phone number?
Right, no, I haven't got a contact phone number. I'm not obliged to give any contact phone number. All I would like now is my card back. I'm not accepting any paperwork from you guys, and I want to go on my way. I'm going to be detained right now.
Legally, yeah? Legally, you're meant to confirm your name and address to me.
Lawfully? Hold on. Lawfully? Lawfully?
Yeah, lawfully.
You're supposed to answer me. You're a public servant.
Yeah, what? No, you can't see my ID. Can I see your ID? I'm glad you brought that up. Can I see your ID? I see your...
I'm not for the vehicle. You're going to have to give me some details, okay? I don't have to give you any details. You're going to have to. Call the sergeant, mate. I don't have to give you any details.
No, ma'am, you may not.
I am talking to and investigating something now. I can't...
You're investigating me for what crime?
I didn't say it was a crime.
Okay, then there's no probable cause or reasonable suspicion for me to provide it.
Because...
And then what would you do if I was to say that I don't have a name? Like, how would you look me up or anything like that?
Well, we wouldn't. Because if I stop you like this to have a chat, and I ask for your name, you don't have to tell me.
Yeah, no, I'm just glad you know that, because a lot of police officers where I'm from don't actually know that.
You don't have to give me a name. The only time you have to give me a name...
You caught me breaking the law.
Or, well no, even then you don't, because you can be booked in as unknown.
I suppose, I could replace.
The only time you're legally obliged to give your name, address and date of birth is when you drive in a car.
If you haven't broken any laws, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to interact with the police if you don't want to. If they come up and try and engage you in conversation, and you haven't done anything, then you don't have to engage in conversation with them. You can you're free to walk away. If they want to detain you, they need reasonable grounds to do that. And if they don't have reasonable grounds to do that, then they're actually in breach of their oath, and they're liable.
With statutes and acts, the consent of the people, those are the people that's there to govern, has not been obtained. And so, it's frowned upon. It's very much a grey area, and police are being used to enforce statutes and acts of the legal system, and not really understanding what that means and what it means as a police officer to police.
I believe that Black's Law Dictionary states that a statute is a legislative rule of a society given the force of law by those who consent. So a statute it doesn't actually say a statute is a law, it says it's a legislative rule of a society given the force of law, but only by those who consent to being in that society or consent to the fact that consent to the law. So if you say to a policeman when they stop you, I'm sorry, I do not consent, I do not understand, that is, I do not stand under you, then you can step away from that. But it's important that you uphold the actual natural law. And of course the policemen and magistrates and also the Queen, they all state oaths to the law of the land. So you can ask an officer if he's actually, are you on your oath? So it's important that we can actually get them on their oath, because they don't swear an oath to uphold the law of the sea or statutes. They swear an oath to uphold the law of the land.
If you're pulled up by the police and the police say to you, can I have your name? And you say no, which officially you don't have to give your name. It's actually on the Metropolitan Police site itself. It actually says you don't have to answer their questions. But if you don't answer their questions, they're going to do one of two things. If you get a good copper, they're going to go, okay, not a problem, you haven't really done anything wrong, we'll leave you alone. You get a bad copper, then you're going to get dragged to the floor, roughed about, cuffs on, you'll be dragged down a station where you will be bullied and coerced into giving your name in the end. And if you don't, they will just keep you as long as they possibly can. To lock any human being in a room that they can't leave, and especially in a room that has the very, very bare essentials, is torture.
So remember, if you haven't broken any laws, no one has the right to tell you what to do. We are all equal in the eyes of the law, from the Queen to the police and to you or I, and we are all innocent until proven guilty. So if a policeman stops you in the street and you haven't broken any laws, do not comply. Always ask am I detained? Or, am I free to go? Do not give your details and ask if you're obliged to. If they do try to search you or arrest you without your consent, tell them you are doing this under duress. If you have not broken the law, do not comply. Only interact with the police if you wish to. If you do not wish to, do not consent. The more of us that do not comply, the less likely this country will become like Nazi Germany or Communist China. The police swear an oath to the Queen, so ask them if they are under their oath. If they reply yes, they are bound by said oath and can only uphold common law.
This is certainly the most updated. When I joined it was slightly differently worded to this, but this is probably the most updated, and it starts with I, you state your name, of, you state whichever police force you are serving, do solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that I will well and truly serve the Queen in the office of Constable, with fairness, integrity, diligence and impartiality, upholding fundamental human rights and according equal respect to all people, and that I will, to the best of my power, cause the peace to be kept and preserved and prevent all offences against people and property, and that while I continue to hold the said office, I will, to the best of my skill and knowledge, discharge all the duties thereof faithfully according to law. That is the oath and attestation of a police constable.
If you ask a policeman to say, are you on your oath, very often they change their, they actually realise what you're talking about and they change their behaviour because their oath was to uphold the common law of the land and not the statutes, not the law of the sea, which is the law of commerce. Because we realise that everything now is to do with commerce. When the policemen stop us, you're not wearing a seatbelt. Well, who am I causing harm to? Where's the loss or damage? It's crazy. And so they say, oh no, you're breaking the law. Well, I'm just breaking a rule, but why? What authority do they have over us? I haven't given them my authority.
The oath that every police officer is to preserve the property, life and subjects of the Queen. Now that to me is people, property, disturbances, breach of the peace. That's how I understand the office of constable to be now. It's basically an oath is a promise. I promise to enforce the law. I promise to serve Her Majesty's subjects. I promise to prevent them as much as I can, prevent them from being harmed, to prevent their property from being destroyed. That to me is the oath of a constable.
Police take an oath when they join the service. Again, they don't really understand what that means. It's not explained in any details. It's kind of a grey area. You just take it to mean whatever you want it to mean. But it's all been set up to allow the system that currently enslaves people to carry on enslaving and to further that enslavement into every aspect of our lives.
Hey guys, so I'm here at Parliament Square for the Occupy London protest. I've just come over to a group of police officers who are protecting and serving the people today. I've just approached this guy here who obviously has his back to me now. What's your name please, sir? Obviously you're obliged to tell me. It's your job as a public servant to identify yourself. So could I have your name, please? Okay, we have here Constable Bird. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. I have here about 200 copies of the UK police officer's oath of office. I've just asked them if they know their oath. They've gone very quiet on me. This isn't an attack on you guys, just so you know. Like, I'm not trying to cause trouble with you or anything. I'm just trying to make sure you do your job properly, obviously. I mean, some emergencies just come up, so I'm going to follow them just to see why they're avoiding my questions. I think we all know it's because they don't know their oath, but I'd like to offer them a copy just to see if they will remember why they became police officers, which was obviously to protect and serve the people of this country. But if during their programming and their training and stuff have forgotten who they actually went into the job for, I'd like to remind them. So I still have the oath in my hand. Look, you can see all the copies. They're walking away from me. They don't want to hear it. My aim at this protest is obviously to help the police remember their oath, to remember what it is that gives them this authority in the first place, and hopefully they will honour humanity and uphold. Let me just read their oath to you guys. Look, they're really walking away from the square and everything. They don't want to hear this at all. I, so-and-so of wherever, do solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that I will well and truly serve the Queen in the office of Constable with fairness, integrity and diligence and impartiality, upholding fundamental human rights and according equal respect to all people. And that I will, to the best of my power, cause the peace to be kept and preserved and prevent all offences against people and property. Sorry, where was I? Prevent all offences against people and property, and that while I continue to hold the said office, I will, to the best of my skill and knowledge, discharge all the duties thereof faithfully according to law. So could you now recite that back to me? This is going on the internet, by the way. Not even an acknowledgement from them, guys. This is what we're dealing with. They've just completely ignored all attempts and walked onto their van and gone away. What are we supposed to do? I'm not giving up. I've got about 200 copies of their oath of office that I'm going to give out to them, and I'm going to ask them to uphold it and say, will you honour this oath and remember why you started this job? And hopefully, fingers crossed, some of them remember that it's the people that they work for. So wish us luck, guys, because we're on a mission to convert these guys to truth and love. Wish us luck. Namaste.
How are you insured?
Excuse me, take your hands out of my camera.
Today.
So I've seen many sorts of videos on YouTube and the like recently where people have been filming encounters with police officers, and they've basically been told that they can't film. But if you look at the Metropolitan Police's official website, it actually states that you can film police officers. If it's in a public domain, if it's in a private domain, then obviously that may well be different, because there's certain laws of corporations and whatever that may prevent that. But certainly if you take a camera or a phone and you record the encounter, there's nothing illegal about that at all. It maybe help as a witness as an accurate account of what's being said, so there's sort of no ambiguity at a later stage. But certainly not illegal to film anyone in a public domain.
There are simply no laws preventing you from filming in public. This also includes the filming of the police performing their duties. Here is a letter that was sent in 2010 to all police stations regarding filming in public.
Dear colleagues, guidance for photographers. I am writing to you in my capacity as chair of the ACPO, Communications Advisory Group, which sits in the Presidential Business Area. There have been a number of instances highlighted in the press where officers have detained and deleted images from their cameras. I seek your support in reminding your officers and staff that they should not prevent anyone from taking photographs in public. This applies equally to members of the media and public seeking to record images, who do not need a permit to photograph or film in public places. ACPO guidance is as follows. There are no powers prohibiting the taking of photographs, film, or digital images in public places. Therefore, members of the public and press should not be prevented from doing so. We need the cooperation with the media and amateur photographers. They play a vital role as their images help us identify crime. We must acknowledge that citizen journalism is a feature of modern life, and police officers are now photographed and filmed more than ever. Unnecessarily restricting photography, whether for the casual tourist or professional, is unacceptable, and it undermines public confidence in the police service. Once an image has been recorded, the police have no power to delete or confiscate it without a court order. Yours sincerely, Andrew Trotter, Chief Constable, Chair of ACPO Communications Advisory Group.
As a professional television cameraman or a member of the public, I am allowed to stand in the street and shoot. I don't need 4 police officers or wardens or whatever you are when I stop to do this. This is absolutely bloody ridiculous. And I'm fed up with every single time that I do this of being stopped and being questioned and being treated like some kind of criminal. Oh, for God's sake, this is Windsor Castle. There are a million people around here with cameras. Do you think a terrorist would stand here with a tripod and make it bloody obvious? Or do you think a tripod would just get a home video, a terrorist would get a home video camera out and shoot?
It's obviously I'm wasting my time talking to you. So.
You clearly are. Thank you very much. Let me get on with my day.
I'm not arguing, I'm asking you a question. Can I film anything in public, in the public? If it's against the law to film in public, then everybody with a camera would be breaking the law, wouldn't they?
What is the actual law saying I'm not allowed to film you?
Nothing. There is no law to say you can't.
Okay.